What's up, guys? Brody here with Squids Pressure Washing LLC, Kansas City's highest rated exterior cleaning company and a veteran owned business. I hate the rain with fancy little mic. But I'm coming back from a place called Blue Springs where I just bought a new trailer and it doesn't have a tag on it, but I got a cop to my left, so we may stop this video short. Anyway, there was a question on the forum, and I get so many emails. I tried to delete my email address like 40 times on the forum because I was left and right about pricing apartment complexes. So I'll try to give you guys a quick rundown about how I price apartment complexes. It is up to you, and I guarantee there's going to be some folks that say that is not the right way to price apartment complexes. There isn't a wrong way to price apartment complexes if you have set profit goals, you add into your pricing structure. So so revenue minus expenses equals profit. What's your profit goal? You got to figure that out. But to figure that out, you have to know what your expenses are, fixed and variable. You need to figure out an average for your variable expenses. But once you know your profit goal, you can price apartments, you can price anything, and except you're not really undercutting because you're meeting your goals. Don't worry about anybody else's business pricing, anything like that. Worry about feeding your family and reaching your goals. Work as much as you want to work in order to take care of business, put some money away, cover your insurances. With apartments, if I go into an apartment community or a townhome community, I look at it and I ask myself, let's look at one building out of, let's say, 10 buildings. I look at that first building and I say, how would I price this if this were a house? And I figure that out. So if the building isn't a large one, let's say it's only 4 units, which is a pretty good size house, let's say that's $449 for a typical house of similar size. So let's say $450 for straight numbers. $450 on that one building, because I can do it in the exact same amount of time as I can do that house, and all 10 of them are the same. Great. All 10 of the apartment buildings are the exact same number of units, $450 a piece, except 3 of them have really bad algae on the north side, and that's to include balconies, which means sometimes I might have to ladder up to a balcony edge, and I'll price that in separately because it's high risk. I'll put a premium on it. But those 5 buildings are going to cost more than $450 because they're going to take more chemical and they're going to take more time. So those buildings, I look at them and I say, how much longer would this typically take me to do than a house of the same size that isn't this bad? $449. But it's going to take me 20% longer to do that building. So I plug that in. And that 20% on that $450, I'm not very athletic right now because I'm driving in the rain. So on that 20% plus $450, that's what that building is. And I go to the next one and I add the same numbers up. Let's say you get one that's really bad. I go and look at that and I say, how long, or what would I charge if this were a house? $450, but it's going to take an extra half hour instead of an hour. So I plug in $450 plus 50%. At the end of it, I add it all up and then divide it by 10 buildings, and that's your price per building. But this house would cost $450. The breezeway is another 30%, or another 20 minutes. Let's say it takes an extra 20 minutes to do this breezeway. That's another 20% on this $450. That's one way to price apartment buildings if they're pretty much cookie cutter. It's just your run-of-the-mill, nothing fancy, totally average apartment complex. Those numbers are small enough that you can still make money because the buildings are easy to clean. Let's go to a really fancy apartment complex where it's a 4-story building and it's got 10 units in it. Let's say it's 4. I go and I look at that first building and I say, this building has an average rent of $1,200. One, because the building is bigger than an average house, so you can't price it that way. Two, there's a cop here. Not for me, ladies and gentlemen, not for me. So we got a big fancy apartment building and we go in, and I'm going to start over because I forgot my numbers. There's 10 units in it, and the exterior is a fancier material, and the units are the same size as your run-of-the-mill apartment complex that we first priced. So let's say the exterior is painted hardy board rather than vinyl, and you've got to be a little bit more protective because sometimes the SH can, guys. Sorry, I had a call come through. I tried to put it on Do Not Disturb. So again, let's talk about a fancy building, 10 units, 4 stories. The average rent in that building is $2,000. So out of those 10 residents, they're making $20,000 a month on that building. And the building is dirty, but it's not that bad. I'm going to charge one resident's rent for that building if I can reasonably clean it from the ground with no lift. So no lift. I can reasonably clean it from the ground. Maybe there's a little bit extra time in order to clean that building. So buildings like that, I imagine we could probably clean 3, if not 4, in one day. But I'm still going to try to sell it as less than one tenant's rent, even though they're making $240,000 a year on that building. I'm going to get $2,000. So I can sell it as less than one tenant's rent. Breezeways, and the average tenant's rent is $2,000. Me an extra hour to get to, it's going to take us an extra hour to get to the other accoutrements, if you will, like these in the stairways. Are we live? Sorry guys, I'm trying to help here and I keep cut out. So again, if it takes me an extra 20 minutes, I am going to add 30% to the, or 33 if you do it there, really up to do. I'm going to add 30% to, if it takes an extra hour. If it takes 1 hour to do the outside and 1 hour to do the inside, I'm going to price that at $4,000. And I'm going to explain why and be very thorough. And at that point, it's my job to sell them on why we're the superior company and it costs more. It's harder to do. We're tenants. We've got to make sure that we get doors taped off, outlets taped off, so on and so forth. I'm going to walk through the process. But pricing on bigger projects, I'm typically going to use the average rent and try to sell it in a way that it's comparable to one tenant's rent, monthly rent, or just two tenants' rent in order to get breezeways, balconies, and exterior clean. So that's how I price it, based on average rent. Or townhomes, I price as if it were just one long house, and now instead of washing 8 sides of 2 houses, now I only have to wash 6 sides. And I hope that makes sense. Most townhomes, average townhomes in Kansas City, can be done one building each. They can both sides can be done in about 40 minutes. If there's brick on the front, it's gonna be less expensive, but most doors, so we count them by doors. If there's 2 doors, well, let me say this. Each door is gonna be between $250 and $350 based on the size of the townhome. Okay, based on the square footage of the layout. So if we get to a townhome community and we say, that looks like it would take us the amount of time that it would take us to do 2 average houses, I'm going to look at what our cost is on 2 average houses, and I'm going to apply that per door. Now, if there's 2 doors, and it takes it takes the exact same as one house, one typical 2-story house, I'm going to charge or bid it at one 2-story house. And at the end of those, with townhomes and apartments where you have to get hydrant meters and permits, I'm going to attach a line item that says hydrant meter permit and rental. And I'm going to explain in the line item underneath how much that costs me, and if it takes me 2 hours to go and get that and to have it installed and to take it back, charge $120 an hour. Your hourly rate into stuff like that. As far as my hourly rate, our hourly rate, it includes what it costs to run this business every hour. So if that's $25 in gas and SH, that's plugged into my hourly rate. So that there's one number, I don't have to worry about anything at all as far as figuring out exactly what it's going to cost me. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit more less SH and fuel you may use on some jobs, but it's all going to average out, I promise. But for me, at 220 or 330 gallons of SH per month, me working, it's 40 hours a week, I divide the monthly cost over 120, or I'm sorry, 160. So if the monthly cost is $600 for SH, I'm going to divide that over 160 because that's the number of hours that I work, and that's going to get plugged into my hourly rate. Same thing with fuel. If I fill up all the tanks Alright, so we charge anywhere from 20 to 40% more for the exact same jobs as anybody else. Everything in between, the business side from the other. Hey, what's up, Ben? I do not put a markup on it. My rate is quite a bit higher than anybody else's, and it's because I genuinely, and I might be biased, but I genuinely believe we clean stuff better than anybody else. So there's a little bit of a premium on labor rate, and there's no real markup because I have SH delivered. You gotta fill up your fuel tank anyways. Parts are gonna go bad. All of that stuff just gets factored in with no markup, especially since I don't have to do anything to get it at this point. The bleach comes automatically, and if I need extra, I make a 2-minute phone call, and it comes. It gets delivered, and it gets dropped off. Same with parts. If I order parts in bulk at one time, there's no way to which job is in this part. So I don't put any markup on parts or fuel. You gotta have fuel anyway. But the labor rate and the numbers that I gave you guys probably be a lot of maybe Georgia and Alabama, but in Kansas City those labor rates are anywhere from 20 to 40% higher than other folks, and that's because of everything we do outside of the cleaning. Not to mention we clean stuff really well. But if you guys have any questions, other questions, please drop them below and I'll try my best to answer them. I hope that this 17 minutes is helpful, and if you guys like it, subscribe. If you really like it, share the channel with your homies, please. Thanks.